Hello and welcome to another edition of Life Made Easier podcast. My name is Lesley. Pazdzioch. It is such a pleasure to have you join me today. Today's guest has such an incredible story to share that will touch the hearts of many parents, just like it has touched the heart of mine. You know, in today's society, we see children struggling, and teenagers trying to find their place and who they are and what they are. And we as parents really have to help guide them through this. And I think this man is the most incredible man I've ever met that guides. He's taken things throughout his life, and he has truly to me, he's inspiring the things that he's done and how he proceeds with his life. You know, I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself, so I'm just going to introduce you. Please welcome my guest, Barry Adkins. And really, this is such a heartfelt story that often many of us as parents go through. And the way he honors himself as a parent, I think, is really good to say. Please welcome Barry Adkins. Barry, thank you so much for joining me. I am so pleased, and I am really looking forward to hearing, having you explain to people what you've done, because I think that you're an incredible parent, you're an incredible man, and very inspiring to me.
Well, thanks for having me on the show, Lesley.
You're welcome. So, Barry, if you would, I don't really know where to start. I just want you to, let's just go for it. I just want you to explain your story, what you went through, and let's just wing it.
Okay, so we'll start with what happened. Kevin had just graduated from high school. He got a job right out of high school, making good money, working for an electrician, and he met my financial requirements, so I agreed to co-sign a loan because he wanted to buy a new truck. And I'm hoping he'll find one from a private party. We'll go down to the credit union, sign papers, and be out of there in 5 minutes. He found one at a dealership. If anyone in your audience works at a dealership, I apologize, but I have a healthy dislike for that process because I know what they're going to do when I walk in there, right? They're going to try to sell me a bunch of stuff that I don't want or need. So I go down to sign papers, sit down in the financial guy's office. The first thing he says to me is, how about some life insurance? I'm like, look, dude, I'm not here for life insurance. I don't need any life insurance. My wife will do just fine if something happens to me. And he said, I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about your son. And I'm that guy. I'm that guy who rather indignantly told him that 18-year-old boys don't die. They don't need life insurance. But I was wrong. They do die. He wouldn't live long enough to make a single payment on that truck. So a couple weeks after he bought the truck, I remember him coming into our living room, and we have this brown chair that sits in front of a big picture window, looks out over our backyard. He sat down in that brown chair and started talking about how he couldn't believe his life was finally beginning, and he wanted to move out. I did my best to discourage him because, honestly, we really never had any problems with him. His high school principal didn't even know who he was, and I considered that a good thing. But I didn't have any luck talking him out of it, so a couple weeks later, his buddy Craig came over, and they started the process of moving him out. He's 18 years old, right? His definition of moving out was throwing a bed, a TV, and a dresser in the back of his new truck. And he came back in to his bedroom, and everybody has a little different clothing system. His clothing system was a pile of clean, wrinkled clothes on the floor next to a pile of dirty clothes. He grabs a pair of the clean jeans, throws them in the dryer to de-wrinkle, came in the living room and told me something I've never forgotten. He said he wasn't going to take his toothbrush with him. He'd be back tomorrow morning and grab it. I walked out front with him like I normally do, gave him a hug, told him that I loved him and to be careful, watched him drive away. It was the last time I saw him alive. That night, his friends decided to throw a little housewarming party for him. Started with a keg of beer, moved on to shots. He left a voicemail for his sister that night talking about how much fun they were having and how much they were drinking and how he loved his nephew Colin more than anything in the whole world. He passed out a short time after he left that voicemail, and the people at the party laid him in his bed on his side in case he vomited. But the party was still going on. They actually went in and shaved his head and his legs while he was passed out because he's just passed out, right? But his buddy Craig was worried about him, kept going back in to check on him. Around 4 a.m., calls started coming into 911. First calls were difficulty breathing. Next calls were not breathing. My son died alone in a hospital while I slept peacefully in my bed. The next morning was Sunday morning. My wife and I are sitting around drinking coffee, talking about what we're going to do or not do that day. About 8:30 in the morning, the doorbell rings, and we're looking at each other because we weren't expecting company. And I open the door and I see two police officers and someone in plain clothes at my front door. Should have been a big red flag, right? It should have been, but I'm that guy. It didn't even occur to me that something bad had happened. I actually joked with them as they came in, thinking this had to have something to do with a dog or a parked car. They didn't laugh at any of my jokes. One of the officers and the person in plain clothes stayed by the front door. The other officer walked in and stood in front of that brown chair that Kevin had sat in 2 weeks before and talked about how his life was finally beginning. He said there'd been an accident. Your son is dead. We asked who because we have a number of children. They said it was Kevin, and they handed me his driver's license. There's something pretty final about it when a police officer hands you your child's driver's license, because until that exact moment in time, you're holding out hope. This is all a big mistake. You've misspelled the last name. You need to be 3 streets over. Next door, at least, right? Any place but my place. But when they hand you your child's driver's license, you know he's gone, and he's never coming back.
That people that are listening to this podcast, one of the main reasons that I really wanted to have this podcast is because I see so much now where our youth is coming up, and there's so much life in them, and they have so much promise and so many dreams. But then there's some that don't have it inside of them, but they don't know how to bring it out of them. There's a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of kids that, like Kevin, knew that he was so excited. He knew where his life was going. He knew the plans that he had, and he was celebrating this. But then there's kids, on the other hand, who don't know where they're going, who don't have anything to celebrate. But they start to drink, they start to do drugs, they start to do many different things to numb inside of them, and to find something sort of outer circumstances or some sort of substance to fulfill something within them, whether it's good or bad, right? The outer circumstances, something on the outside of them to fill the inside of them. And one of the things that I want to really stress upon with me is that I have been there. I'm a parent. I've seen that in my own children. But I think it's very important to understand that as we're raising our children, as we're looking at ourselves and we're trying to move forward and be the best that we can possibly be, it's important to really instill in those that are all around us that what truly matters, and where we really have to find that celebration is within ourselves, right? We have to look within ourselves. And that's where we're going to find that joy. That's where we're going to find the answers. That's where we're going to celebrate, is within ourselves first. And then this, to me, is living from the inside out. Mr. Adkins, you are such a beautiful soul. And I truly appreciate you sharing this story with me, and how it all came about. And I know that there are many parents out there that can relate to it. And even if they're saying, but my child wasn't celebrating his or her success, they were lost or they were confused, what would you say to them?
There is hope. There's always hope in Jesus Christ. There is always hope. And it's amazing. I have heard so many stories of recovery. I know a number of people that have been in recovery for 10, 15, 20 years, and it's Tim Allen used to do home improvement, and I remember seeing an interview with him one time, and he had been, I believe, an alcoholic, and he said the most beautiful gift he ever has received is the gift of sobriety. There is a beautiful world out there.
So many people use alcohol as a means of celebration, and I'll tell you just a little bit of a story from my perspective. I grew up in a family that were alcoholics. My parents were alcoholics. They drank quite a bit, and so all the adults around me were alcoholics. I never really drank until I was probably 29. It was after my kid's father and I got divorced, and that's when I drank. But I also married an alcoholic. And I think that's, we just keep these tendencies going forward. I know I can honestly say now that there's nothing good that comes from it. And all we're doing is masking things, and alcohol or any other sort of substance, and we're masking or building layers or covering up those feelings. Sometimes they're feelings of whatever they are, positive, negative, whatever they are, but we're trying to cover them up when they're negative because we don't want to feel them. And eventually, we end up, and when we do that, we build up more barriers, right? We build up more barriers inside of us because we're not willing to take a look at who we are. And I'm saying this in general with alcohol. And because I didn't want to face certain things that were going on in my life. And I had 3 little children at home. But I know that for many it's a problem. And for some of these teens that are going through this stuff in life and trying to grow up and figure out who they are looking outwardly for this sense of something, their sense of self, I think. So, Mr. Adkins, can you just now, I'd like you to just talk about and share with everybody about, what is alcohol poison? Well, first of all, I want you to just finish, go on from there so that we can, what did you do after this meeting? How did you move forward with that?
So a couple days after he passed away, I had another life-changing event. I'm going to do my best to describe it here. It was about 4 o'clock in the morning. I was laying in bed, wide awake, and I can only describe it as I felt like someone had walked in the room. There was a light I've never seen before and haven't seen since. And there was a message. Kevin didn't suffer, and something very good would come from this. And I'm not here to tell everybody that made everything okay, but that phrase, something very good will come from this, is the phrase that I have chased for almost 20 years now. And I suspect that I will never know what that means. I mean, I had hoped to be able to ask a question, well, what does that mean? Because that's the struggle, is to figure out what something very good is. And that's what I've been spending the last 20 years doing.
Mr. Adkins, I think that I can tell you honestly that as you go forward to sharing, how you processed this situation, what you did within yourself, what you were called, what you felt the calling within yourself to move forward to do, that's going to be very heart-touching for others. But I think that what's most important that I want to share with you is when you said that something very good will come from this. Something very good will come from this. Mr. Adkins, I think that your story has saved many, many families. I think it's saved many other lives. I think it's given some parents, humbled some parents. I think it's given hope to children. I think that there's there's been a lot of how this has really helped the world, helped others, and the good that's come out of it. I think that as people hear the rest of your story, they're going to understand what I'm saying. But I can personally tell you that my heart and my soul tell me that the good that came from this so far is that as you share your story, you're saving lives and you're saving relationships. So thank you for that. Please continue.
So now we got to figure out. So we decided to have Kevin cremated, and a couple days later, I got the call I could come and pick up his ashes. And I remember going down to the funeral home and walking in the funeral home, and they've got nice pictures on the wall, and they're playing music in the background. They take me into an office, sit me down in a big, comfortable chair with a desk in front of me. The funeral director walks in, sets an urn down in front of me. An urn that holds all the remains of the kid that I birthed, changed his diapers, coached baseball, basketball, soccer, football, taught him to shoot a gun and swing a golf club. All the remains of him were sitting in an urn in front of me. And there's one thing I knew at that point, and that was that I didn't want to be a victim. Because the world doesn't need any more victims. They've got plenty already. The world needs people who take something bad and they make something very good come from it. And I thought about what I would hope somebody else would do if it happened to their kid. And for me, the answer was pretty easy. It was to get out and tell the story. Not for the money, because we both know there's no money in the world that'll fix the hurt. The only thing that helps is to try to make something good come from such a senseless tragedy. So now we got to figure out what we're going to do with his ashes, right? I grew up in Kalispell, Montana, and Kevin had been there a number of times and talked about wanting to move there someday and buy a ranch. So we decided to take his ashes to Montana. I suppose the normal thing to do would be to put him in your car and drive up there, but I decided to put him in my backpack and walk from Gilbert, Arizona to Kalispell, Montana with his ashes in my backpack and tell the story along the way. Because I guarantee you, you don't ever want to go through this.
Hello, Mr. Adkins, you leave me speechless, and I think you're one of the most incredible men I've ever spoken to. Like, you're such a powerful parent. I wasn't going to cry. I knew I wasn't going to cry, but I just can't because of what you did. I mean, you're taking your son's ashes in a backpack and you're walking to Montana to share this story, and you're wondering, you're going to share this story along your way from this, the good that came out of this is the good. So can you continue, please? Because I have to get myself together.
So there's three things about this that I think are important to understand in terms of takeaways. And the first one is about decision making. The two most important decisions you will ever make, apart from following Jesus, are about drugs and alcohol. It isn't even close. We all know stories. You need to educate yourselves about the dangers of drug and alcohol abuse as if your life and the lives of your children depend upon it. Because it does. It just does. And the second thing is about adversity. Bad stuff happens to everyone. The way you respond to adversity is going to define your life. Notice I didn't say might, it will. And third, and perhaps most important, is about this thing called forgiveness. It was easy for me to forgive the guys at the party because this was Kevin's choice, right? This was his decision. And it was easy for me to forgive my kid because that's what parents do. But there was one person that was really hard to forgive, and that was me. It took 1,400 miles and 5 pairs of shoes, but I have found a way to forgive myself. I heard a pastor describe it best once. He said that anger and vengeance lead to one thing, destruction. Forgiveness leads to healing. And sometimes the most important person you need to forgive is yourself. Nobody's perfect. We all make mistakes. It's the way you handle it that matters.
Yeah, this is a pretty powerful story. I don't think I've ever been so speechless in my entire life through a podcast because this one of the things I haven't shared yet on this podcast is that both Mr. Adkins and I have lost a child, and I lost my son when he was 7 days shy of 5 months. He passed away on an Ash Wednesday. I'm Catholic. I was raised Catholic, I've been practicing Catholic at the time. And I was pretty angry. I was really pretty angry at God because I thought this kid had everything, right? He had everything. I was like one of those parents that I had my kids' bed sheets so that they were smooth for them, and I did everything I could to make things right for them. And just like Mr. Adkins and I shared that, we did everything we can to give our kids the very best we could. And then we just sit back and I wondered, what the hell just happened? Why my child when he would have had everything and he would have grown to be this most amazing person because of the plans that I have for him, not the plans that God has for him, and how he's going to touch people, right? It's not the plans God has for his life, the plans that I had for Anthony's life. Just like Mr. Adkins with his son, he just had all these dreams and he just saw and he just did so well and got Kevin to this point where he could celebrate this young man's successes. And I remember with my son, when my son died, and it was with crib death, there's no explanation. They don't even know why it happened. I mean, they're starting to figure stuff out now, but this was like 36 years ago. And it's still, it still will come up with me and it still touches my heart and my soul. But I found a way to make peace with it because I realized, like you, like you, Barry, you looked at it and you said, something good's going to come of this. Something good's going to come of this. And me, it was more of, what was the point? What was the point? I mean, my water broke at 28 weeks. I laid in the hospital. I delivered at 30 weeks. He got viral pneumonia. I finally got him home. He was just doing so well. And all of a sudden he was gone. And I was so angry with God, so pissed at the world.
Me too. I agree with that.
God,
I was angry with him too.
I was so angry with God when this happened. I just, it took me 13 years to process Anthony's death. I would set a place. We have the dinner plates and then the salad plates and then the salad bowls and what have you. But I would always, at every holiday, put a little plate. There was always a bread plate at the table for Anthony. And when my kids were little, they'd say, well, Mom, what is that plate for? And I'd say, that's for our guardian angel. That's for our guardian angel. As they got older, they learned that that was for their brother. It did take me 13 years and to process it. And it was when I learned, just like I can say to you, Barry, when you say, what good's going to come of this? You know, we all come as souls, what I've learned from Anthony. We all come here and we're a soul. We have a purpose, and when our purpose is served, we go, right? I think one of the things that I just kept processing is, what the hell with Anthony? What could this little baby who was 10 weeks early born, fighting for his freaking life, what could he have done? But you know what? Then I sit back and I look at the lives that he touched in the University of Utah Hospital. Anthony was a recipient for the first time of a surfactant that they took from cows' lungs and put into newborn lungs to help them produce faster. Anthony was one of the trial babies for that. And it was it was probably, honestly, 2013, when I was living in Scottsdale, Arizona. I met a young girl, and it just so happened through our conversation, she was born in the same hospital with her twin brother. They were both born early. They both received that surfactant right around the same time Anthony was born, and they lived. And I looked at it, and I kind of, I didn't tell her my story, I don't think. I might have, I don't know. But I think now, maybe that was part of it. Maybe Anthony helped keep those two alive. I don't know, but I know that Anthony touched the lives of many people, and there was a purpose, so I need to move forward with that. Mr. Atkins, there was a conversation. So as you're walking, there was a conversation that you had with, well, first of all, I want you to tell people why you decided to walk and about the Lonesome Dove movie. What made you decide to walk this 1,400 miles, and what does it have to do with Lonesome Dove?
Well, the idea to take his ashes to Montana was one of his best friends. He said, well, that's the place he always wanted to go, so that's what we did. The idea to walk actually came from the movie Lonesome Dove. It had Tommy Lee Jones and Robert Duvall in it. That was Kevin's favorite movie. It's an old Western. It's a great movie. It's a long movie, 3.5 hours. But that's where the idea came from. And I don't want to give it away to the audience. They should watch the movie and they'll see the connection at the end. But that's where in my mind I kind of created this. I'll probably just go ahead and walk there. And at first I thought, well, I'm just going to walk the Continental Divide, from Arizona to Montana, and then that'll get me to Montana. But I decided to do this walking part. And as you can imagine, there's a lot of people tried to talk me out of it, right? Because I wasn't independently wealthy. My employer kept me on the payroll for 4 months while I did it. But I remember a guy saying something to me, and I'll never forget this. Because I was talking to him about it, and do I do this, do I not? Because the risk of failure is high here, right? The risk of failure is very high. And he said to me, how do you think you'd feel about it in 10 years if you don't do it? And for me, that sealed the deal. Because you don't know what your life's going to be like in 10 years. Are you physically going to be able to do this? You might be in a wheelchair. Who knows, right? I just decided I'm going to make this happen. And with a lot of help from above, and I am convinced of that, this is all stuff that was God-breathed. It was not me. It was just me. And why God chose me for this mission, Lesley, is a complete mystery to me. Because I'm not the right guy. Yeah, I knew who Jesus was. I know who God is. And, went to church and did all that. But things like this completely change your relationship with him. They really do. And that's hard to describe, but it did happen.
So one of the things that comes to my mind as you're talking about this, Barry, is that why did God choose you? And sometimes I ask myself, why did God choose me for what I'm doing now? Why did God choose me to create Life Made Easier podcast? Why did God choose me to share with people and teach them how to live from the inside out? God, and it's like, I'm not special. I've struggled. I fight through my life, and I don't have all the answers. But one of the things I can tell,
That's correct.
One of the things I can tell you is what I've learned is that God doesn't call the ready, He readies the call. And that was, and I can say over the past 8 years, God has been readying me so that I can do what I need to do. And there was one other thing that you said in the beginning of what you were saying. But I remember now. It was about when I got divorced and everything, for my kid's dad and stuff. One of the things that with this transition and I remember one night it was almost like when things were coming to a head with my son passing and getting a divorce and everything. I remember driving in Colorado and just being upset, right? Crying, and I'm lost. I didn't know what to do. And everything was just Anthony and my marriage and everything that I would work for was just weighing heavy on my heart. I was driving towards the mountain. I just went for a drive. I was driving towards the mountains. I saw this cross in the sky. And I just knew that was my sign, right? That's God's giving me a sign. I mean, I just kept driving towards this. Well, it turns out that it's a cross on the mountain. It's always been there, and it's right above a Catholic church. But I remember I remember going to the church and talking to the priest and saying to him, explaining to him everything that was going on in my life and why I was feeling so frustrated and what if, and all this stuff. And I said, I just don't believe in God because I can't feel him. I can't find him. Why is he doing this to me? Right? What did I do? And he said to me, Lesley, if you go your whole life and if you live your whole life and you believe in God and you believe that there's a higher purpose for everything, even in the things you don't understand, you can't see, what do you gain? And I said, everything. And he said, but if you don't believe in God and you go through your life not a believer and not in hope, not in forgiveness, not in trying to become the best version of yourself, what do you have to lose? And I said, everything. And that, my friend, hit me hard, really, really, really hard. And so it was remembering that and as I was moving forward, and I think every day I just have to be the best person I can be at this point in time. Do we still get angry with God? Do we still not understand? Absolutely. All the time I do. I question everything. But that was really important to me. I don't know. What do you think? I mean, we don't always understand.
It's hard to understand, but so I attend a non-denominational Bible church, and the pastor there uses this line all the time that it's not about your works. James talks about that, right? It's not about your works. It's about what you believe, and that you don't have to do all these things. You don't have to do this, this, and this to find your way to God. God, in love and mercy and grace, works his way to you. You just have to be willing to receive him. It's that simple. There are no perfect people. We all make mistakes, and God still loves you despite your shortcomings.
How long did the walk take you, Kevin? Or Barry, how long did the walk take you?
It took about 4 months. I averaged about 90 miles a week, met a lot of wonderful people along the way. I know in the world today, we think most of the world is jaded, but I just met a lot of wonderful people along the way that just wanted to help. I had ladies bring me brownies and milk one day. Every single day, people would stop and talk to me. And what I discovered too is that everybody's got a story. You talk to them and they'll start. In fact, the doctor who gave me a physical spent about 20 minutes telling me about all the problems with drugs and alcohol in his family. And everybody has a story, and we need to focus on telling those stories to everybody we can, all the students we can, because nobody ever believes it's going to happen, but it can happen. That's why I say I'm that guy. I just never believed anything bad would ever happen to me, but I was wrong.
Yeah, we don't ever really think that that's going to happen. I remember when we first interviewed, there was something that you shared with me that I hope that you're okay if I bring this up. That I would really like you to share with others, because this is the one thing that just sealed my heart with you, and just knowing that God was blessing you, that you're just like, you're an incredible man, and I knew it from this point. But I would like you to share, and I'm not even sure if you know what I'm talking about, but you know I know. The chat that you had in the mountain, do you remember, with your uncle?
Yeah, so
this is a beautiful story, and I really, before I'm going to interrupt you, I think that if anybody's watching this podcast, if there was any other point except in the beginning of the story that people really need to pay attention to what he shares with us now, because if you listen with your heart and your soul, it's going to move you to a place that you will never ever come back from. So please listen very closely to what Mr. Adkins is going to share, because these are these words of wisdom are going to, your life will never be the same. Thank you.
I believe what you're referring to, I was up in the Bob Marshall Wilderness up in Montana with my uncle. We had backpacked in and took horses and mules and stuff in there. And we hiked up on top of this hill, and we were sitting there, and it was just quiet. You couldn't hear anything other than the wind blowing. And I remember turning to him and saying, "Man, it's quiet up here." And he responded and said, "Yeah." And that silence has a lot to say.
Silence has a lot to say. This moved me so much because I think that sometimes when we say nothing, we say everything. When we choose to be at peace, it says a lot more than reacting out of.
Yeah, and basically, when you think about it, there's prayer time where you're spending time talking to God, but there's also time when you need to listen to that. Listen for Him. You need to listen for that still small voice. It's not going to be a booming voice saying, do this or do that. I describe it as a still small voice that will guide you. But it's there, and you have to listen for it.
Yeah, you do. Well, it's just incredible. So it took you 4 months, and you went through 5 pairs of shoes. I really did, and obviously you didn't do this all on your own. You obviously, and I know that you had planned it out, and you knew where you were going to stay and how long you were going to walk. But can you just share with people who was with you and the healing process? That there's a healing process that you went through with over these 4 months, and it was like an inner. I remember through our interview when we first met, there was an inner something happened within you as you were taking this journey, and do you mind sharing that a little bit?
My one daughter walked part of it with me. My wife, Bev, I called her the road manager. She's the one that managed everything from when we're going to move, all that kind of stuff. And the other thing about that, when you talk about silence, I did not wear headphones. First of all, because I wanted to be able to hear the traffic because I'm walking on 2-lane roads. There was no distractions. I'm just out there walking. In today's world, there are just so many distractions. We're always looking at our phone or at the TV or your computer, whatever it is. And I had 4 months of pretty much silence for, 7 or 8 hours a day. There was no distractions. And to say that was therapeutic is not a fair description. I did the walk in 2007, and I look back on it, and I'm stunned that I'm the one that did it. I'd have been thrilled if somebody else did it, and I said, wow, there's no way I could pull that off. But I tell everybody, if I can manage to do something like this, imagine what you can. Was there a lot of questions? Was I worried about getting sick or getting hurt? Oh, you better believe it. I actually had padded the schedule with days off just in case I was going to need them, but I did not have a single sick day or weather day in 4 months. There was plenty of days where I didn't feel like going, to be clear. And another question I get asked fairly commonly is, did you ever think about quitting? The answer to that is no. But there was a period where I started to wonder if I was going to make it. For those of you who aren't familiar with Arizona, I started in Gilbert, which the elevation's about 1,300 feet. I went up to Payson, Arizona, and then from there over to Flagstaff. Flagstaff is at about 7,500 feet-ish. So I went from 1,300 feet to 7,500 feet, and many, many ups and downs in between. And I remember outside of Flagstaff just starting to doubt myself, because what I was thinking about was 1,400 miles, right, or another 11 or 1,200 miles to go in 3 more states. And it really got inside my head, but I decided to change the way I thought about it. And I did not think anymore about Montana or Idaho or Utah. I thought about walking 3 more miles. My wife would meet me about every 3 or 4 miles and then take a break. And it's a great metaphor for life, because you look off in the distance and say, well, I could never get to that point. But what steps can you take today toward that point? For me, it was really easy, right? Clearly, every day I'm getting closer. I don't want to think about 1,200 miles, because that really that does get inside your head. But I just blocked it all out and said, I'm going to walk 3 more miles and take a break.
That's exactly, the metaphor for life, but, taking things step by step. And now I remember the 5 souls and the 5 pairs of shoes, the analogy that I had, that I was thinking of. You went through the 5 pairs of shoes, right? And I remember during our interview, I was sharing with you, there's the journey of the soul, and there's 5 levels of the journey to joy, right? Of the soul to get to the level of joy. And this is more of a, it was a ladder. It's called the pleasure ladder. It was created by a Jewish rabbi. This is what I was talking about earlier when I said the five levels of the soul and your 5 pairs of shoes. Because I know that the reason that we as parents would have, and you particularly, would have taken this on is to find that level of healing, the level of understanding within ourselves of what just happened. What just happened? And those 4 months and 5 pairs of shoes, you had to have processed things within yourself to find a place of peace. I mean, I couldn't do that and be in my own head, but being present. You learn to be present with everything in life. Maybe that was part of the reason that something good's going to happen, because you're more present in life as well, right? I think that we can find that. And the reason I bring this up is because Barry and I had been talking about some things during our interview, but there's a pleasure ladder that was created, and it's the steps to find joy in our life. And I have it. I just pulled it up, and I want to. There's the first level, and it's through personal pleasure. It's our physical pleasures, and then what brings us joy, what physically brings us joy, is it around us. Then there's the next level is love. Finding that level of love. The next level is meaning, finding meaning for our lives. Creativity is the 4th, and pleasure is the 5th, and that's the level of transcendence. And as I listened to your story, and as I listened to the process of everything that you did, I think that this walk that you took for 4 months and your 5 pairs of shoes also took you on a journey of the 5 levels of the soul, where you learned that physical, what you were really capable of, right? You just said, I look back and think I could have never done that, but physically now I look at it and I think, my God, that's powerful. I mean, that is freaking powerful, right? You learn, now you understand the joy of life. You appreciate life, that you don't take it for granted. Whereas I think that sometimes we forget what it was about, but I think this journey, subconsciously, you're one of the most joyful people, and you're one of the most appreciative people. And that's what I say. You learned the physical part. You learned love. You learned the meaning of everything. You went through every level of the pleasure ladder throughout this time. And in the end, you found joy. And
it's a life-changing journey, that's for sure.
You found joy in life. I'm telling you, you're just, I mean, I know that sometimes I can get pretty metaphorical about things, but I think that you truly found the joy in life, and you appreciate. One of the things I know about that I've gained from you is that you appreciate everything. You don't take life for granted.
I do.
And you taught people not to take life for granted.
It's so true that you start appreciating things. The 3 things I mentioned about decision making and adversity and forgiveness. The adversity part, all of my grandkids have introduced me at schools, and one of my grandsons now has that part about adversity tattooed on his arm. The way you respond to adversity will define your life. And he now has it tattooed in my handwriting, no less, which is hard to come by because I don't like to write. But he got that tattooed on his arm. So I think he gets it. Yeah. I think they all get it at this point.
Probably the biggest in my soul right now, what I feel is something good that came out of this, Mr. Adkins, is the sheer strength that you hold within yourself, that you have given to not only your children, not only the people around you, but also your grandchildren. Because I just want you to know, I appreciate you so much, and you're an incredible, humble man. That if anybody gains anything from this podcast, I hope that they really truly Understand that life is a gift. It's such a gift in the way we treat each other and the time we give others and the compassion, the forgiveness, the understanding, the sheer understanding that we're all here together and we're all here to learn from each other. And we need to be kind and we need to be compassionate and we need to be understanding even when we don't know why.
Yeah. Well, I've really enjoyed it too, Lesley.
I'm going to let you finish this podcast because I'm telling you, I've never had anybody touch my heart so much as you with this story. And you're just, Mr. Adkins, you are a real hero. Thank you.
You bet. So you can get a hold of me. The website is kevinslastwalk.com. On Facebook, it's just Kevin's Last Walk, all one word. I wrote a book about it. It's called Kevin's Last Walk, A Father's Final Journey with His Son. And I'm happy to go anywhere and tell the story. If I have to travel, I have to charge travel costs, but I specifically don't charge a fee for my time. So I'll go wherever and do this. And if somebody wants to make something very good happen, let me know and we'll get it worked out.
Thank you, Mr. Atkins. If anybody really, truly, this is an incredible offer and it's just a betterment of humanity in general. Thank you again for joining me on this podcast and we will talk again soon, I'm certain.
Thanks, Lesley.
So, everybody, I want to thank you. Just take a few moments and thank you for joining me for this podcast. And I hope that the one thing that came out of this for everyone is that we're all here together. We're all here to learn. We're all here to grow. And every experience has something positive to come out of it, especially in the worst, heart, gut-wrenching, painful experiences that we have in our life. Whether it's, us personally with whatever goes on around us, there's always a pleasant, more peaceful way to find. There's always an easier or more satisfying way to find that inner peace within us when we don't understand what's going on the outside of us. So I hope that everybody takes this podcast and really puts it to heart because it not only talks about it reaches out for a lot of different things. Anyway, thank you again for joining us, and I'll see you on the next version of Life Made Easier podcast. Take care.